Hey, welcome into the Stink Truth Podcast. Mark Schlereth alongside Mike Evans. Week 16 gets underway tonight as the Broncos head out to L.A. to face the Chargers, where they're going to whip that ass. There's no question in my mind about that. The Broncos on a heater right now, won 4 straight. The Chargers have lost 2 straight, so that's going to be a great matchup. Mike, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing great, and I never cease to be amazed at the reach that you have, that your ability to go into different genres and different walks of life. The most recent example, folks, Google Us Weekly and Mark Schlereth. It's an entertainment magazine, and there you are, NFL legend Mark Schlereth, with, by the way, I have to say, a very attractive picture. You come across in a very flattering light in the picture.
Let me just interrupt you really quick.
Yeah, set it all up.
Like, how did I step in it this time? I get more. It feels like I'm catching more strays, stepping in things. Okay, go ahead and tell me what it is I allegedly said.
So when it works with social media, right, it's all about these algorithms, and if a certain word or phrase pops up, maybe it flashes and it ends up getting a bit of run. Well, Taylor Swift is Taylor Swift, right? Mm-hmm. Taylor Swift, Jason Kelce, Kansas City Chiefs. These are all these little buzzwords, right? And you went off in an interview, I think with Rich Eisen, in which you were talking, you called out Andy Reid for being partially responsible for Patrick Mahomes' injury.
I don't remember. You're going to have to refresh my memory on what I said. I don't remember even intimating that.
You're literally quoted as saying, Andy Reid has this tendency to want to win his way. And so instead of running the ball and doing the smart thing, he wants to win a certain way. And as a result, he put Patrick Mahomes into harm's way. And there you go. And there you are in Us Weekly.
Is any of that not true?
What do you mean?
Is any of what I said, first off, I didn't say he hurt Patrick Mahomes, but is any of that not true? So I'll take you back to the Super Bowl against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, okay? Go all the way back then. They had an injured offensive line that didn't play really well. In that particular game, Patrick Mahomes was running around for his life. He threw it 49 times. He was hit, sacked, harassed the entirety of the game. I remember some stat like he ran for like 400 yards sideways. Do you remember the stat that came out after the Super Bowl? It was ridiculous. And by the way, in that particular game, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were inviting Kansas City to run the football. They were like, hey, man, our linebackers are going to play 7 yards deep, and we're going to have a light box. Please run the football, in which Kansas City averaged 6.3 yards a carry, threw it 49 times, and rushed it 17 times. They lost that Super Bowl because of Andy Reid's hubris. Like he doesn't want to run the ball. So last week against Cleveland, when they're playing the Cleveland Browns, they've got a 21-0 lead in the fourth quarter, and they're still throwing the football. Like that to me, it's mind-bogglingly, it's just mind-bogglingly stupid. Like speaking of stupid, you guys are watching me. But it's just it boggles my mind. It boggles my mind.
So let's see what else we have. And again, this is coming from NFL legend Mark Schlereth, by the way, according to. But yeah, there seems to be this aversion, Andy Reid, of running the football and eating things up. Like, I'm going to win the way I want to win, said Mark Schlereth, a former guard who played 12 seasons in the NFL. And you're on the 4th offensive left tackle in this game, and yet you're still throwing it with the lead. I really don't understand that philosophy from Andy Reid. He's a great coach, but there are some times where I just completely disagree with the way he calls the game. So Chiefs Kingdom, have at him. Mark Schlereth.
Okay, come get a taste.
Won't be the first time.
Right, come get a taste, because everything I said was 100% true, and it's stupid. Dude, you got a 21-0 lead in the fourth quarter, and you're still throwing the football with your fourth offensive tackle, your fourth string offensive, who, by the way, is your starting guard that you decided to move out to left tackle. And it's Joe Thuney or whatever, Thuney, he played well out there. But still, like, that doesn't make any sense at all to me. Like, I look at this game, all right? So the Kansas City Chiefs right now against the Houston Texans, right? They've played 3 games, or they're going to play 3 games in 11 days. So they've got 2 games left here in this 3-game and 11-day chance, right? And Patrick Mahomes coming off the mildly sprained, high ankle sprain, whatever the case may be, against the second best sack team in football in the Houston Texans. You can argue that their edge presence, okay, with Will Anderson off of one edge and Daniil Hunter off the other edge, they've got the best edge pass rushing presence in the National Football League. You've got the 2 weakest tackle situations in the National Football League. Like, that's a recipe for disaster. I mean, an absolute recipe for disaster. So, like, I would look at that and say, hey, man, you've got to do a great job. To me, this is the number one, like, this is the number one coaching job that Andy Reid is going to have to do for his team this year, is devise a plan on how to slow down the pass rush of the Houston Texans in this game. That's the number one. That's your number one requirement as a coach. Your number one task as a coach. So what does that mean? Well, I am an NFL legend. Just ask Us Weekly. So what does that mean to me? You got to run the football. You've got to take the passive out of pass protection. You got to run the football. You got to run the screen game. You've got to have the quick pathing, the 3-step quick pass drops. You got to run the bubbles and the smokes and everything outside. You got to get the ball out of your quarterback's hand, because he is hobbled a little bit, and you've got a great pass rush. And as a matter of fact, Tim Settle, their defensive tackle, came out and said, hey, man, that's not a threat. It's a promise. We're getting after Patrick Mahomes. We're going after Patrick Mahomes. And that's what you do, Mike. I mean, listen, if I'm playing against a defensive tackle that has, let's say, a bulky knee or a back or something, one of the first things we're going to do as a game plan is we're going to double team that guy with power. Like, we're going to run a power play. We're going to get a double deuce block between guard and tackle. We're going to try to roll his ass up. Let's test that back. Let's test that knee. Shoot, we had a guy, I mean, I remember as plain as day, like, this is a gladiator blood sport to a degree. We used to have this play called 1819 Bob. And they had a corner who was coming off a quad injury. Okay? I'm playing for Denver, corner with a quad injury. So Bob was like a play where we came with our wide receivers and we cracked on the inside. Guard, which was me, pulled on 19 Bob. I pulled, and my only responsibility was to go cut the cornerback, get him right in the legs, right? So I get out on the edge, I got to cut him, and it's a reverse sweep to one of our wide receivers. Yep. So everything's going the opposite way. It's like a fake handoff wide to the right-hand side. I'm pulling to the left. My only responsibility is to go crack that cornerback in his thigh that's injured. Like, that's how the league works. You got a hamstring, you're a corner that's got a hamstring, we're running 9 routes on your ass. Right. We're running straight goes. Let's see how that hamstring holds up. That's part of the NFL. Is it brutal? Yeah, it is. But there's a reason some guys can do it and some people can't. And that's part of the game plan that goes on. So if you're Andy Reid, man, this is one of the number one coaching jobs you have this season. How do I still run an effective offense while at the same time protecting my quarterback?
So check out Mark Schlereth, now making a weekly appearance in Us Weekly. So congratulations, Stink. Your media reach just continues to grow and grow and grow. John Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson have done a lot of really good things together in Baltimore, but they can't beat Pittsburgh. They get another shot on Saturday, this one at home. Do they get over the hump?
You know what's crazy? Is that I think if you polled anybody who follows this game, like follows football, like if I asked you, just point blank, Mike, not knowing the history of this matchup, Mike, who's the better team right now, Baltimore or Pittsburgh? You would say?
Baltimore, easy.
right? Everybody would. It's like a no-brainer. But there is that kind of saying that styles make fights.
Yep.
And there are certain teams you don't match up well with. But this just goes beyond any semblance of logic. So the Steelers have won 8 of the last 9 games against the Ravens. I mean, it's incredible, right? And you look at Lamar when he plays the Pittsburgh Steelers. He is 2-5 against the Steelers, okay? 2-5, completing only 57% of his passes, has 5 TDs versus 8 interceptions. Dude, Lamar, the Pittsburgh Steelers are Lamar's kryptonite. And whatever they're doing on the defensive side of the ball, if it's shutting down the run, and this is my kind of philosophy with the Baltimore Ravens, if you can shut down the run and make Lamar Jackson be a drop back passer, you beat the Ravens, because that's not what Lamar does well. And I know I'm going to hear all the Lamar fans, the stands coming out and going, Lamar's completion percentage and the number of MVPs he's won. Oh, what about that deep ball? Yeah, when you get man-to-man coverage. Like, I sat and did Jacksonville last week, and I'm talking to Doug Peterson. And Doug Peterson says to me, point blank, throwing against man-to-man is so easy compared to throwing against zones, a good zone team, because playing against a good zone team, you have to be anticipatory with your throws. You have to throw to open windows before the receivers get into those windows. So you have to have confidence. You can't wait for the sight. You can't see the receiver coming to that window. You can't see him break. You've got to trust that he's going to break on time, the right depth. So it goes, it's not only quarterback, but the receivers have to be so pinpoint accurate in their route and route combinations, all these things. So when you can play zone, when you can defend the run and play zone, you've got a great chance, right, at beating a quarterback who's not great at zones and great at throwing against the zone. The Lamar Jackson, is a great quarterback. Don't get me wrong. He can run. He can do all those things. He's a multiple-time MVP winner and all that stuff, Mike. But when you take away the running game and make him play quarterback from a drop-back standpoint, he is average at best, maybe below average. And I know you don't want to hear that. I know Baltimore fan doesn't want to hear that. And, oh, Stink, you're racist, or, oh, Stink, you're, this, that, or the other. Oh, Stink. It's just the facts. It's facts. That's all it is. And that's what Pittsburgh has been able to do. That's what the Kansas City Chiefs have been able to do to Lamar Jackson when they play. So you can stop the run. Guess what? You'll beat the Baltimore Ravens.
So this now then becomes a really big game for the Ravens, no? Because they have to start to establish some sort of confidence against Pittsburgh, with the very strong chance that they could meet up in the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is huge. And I think one of the other things that happens to the Baltimore Ravens, because they have a history, right? Mm-hmm. They have a history of getting their ass kicked by, Pittsburgh. So what ends up happening? Well, you look at their past history, okay? That 8 of 9 that they have won, okay? Baltimore has turned the ball over in those games 8 times and had 12 penalties. The one time they won, what do you think happened? The one time they won the turnover battle. That was it. So what ends up happening to you? You end up hearing your coach talk all week about, hey, we can't turn the ball over. We can't turn the ball over. We can't turn the ball over. Hey, we can't have penalties. We can't have penalties. We can't have penalties. And when all of a sudden you turn the ball over, all of a sudden you have a couple of penalties, you know what happens? Oh, shit.
Yep.
Here we go again. It's the oh, shit, here we go again prophecy. And that's what happens to the Baltimore Ravens. So they're going to have a little bit more mental toughness, and they're going to have to play clean football. But they're going to have to understand when they don't, and they will make a mistake, and they will either turn the ball over or have penalties. You know what you got to do? You got to drop a set of nuts and overcome it.
So go back to the beginning of this, because you were talking about how styles make fights, and that there are just some styles that just teams struggle with, and Baltimore, Pittsburgh seems to be an example of that. But explain that to me. How does that happen? How does a really good team like Baltimore struggles so much against a team like Pittsburgh, but yet Pittsburgh might look, ordinary against the Cleveland Browns or Cincinnati Bengals? What is it specifically that, take these really good teams and for some reason they don't match up? What tends to be some of the common denominators in those kind of hard to figure matchups like this one?
Okay, sometimes it's your scheme versus the scheme, like offensively, the scheme we run versus the scheme the defense runs. Okay. So sometimes it's just that. Sometimes it's the matchup of personnel. And I think oftentimes it's the matchup of personnel. They've got a guy that for whatever reason just really is good against your best player. Like that, for whatever reason, his skill set matches the other guy's skill set and he just shuts that guy down. So let's say it's a corner that just has his way with your top flight wide receiver. And it just that guy never gets himself going. It never happens to kind of like just blossom. And so he can never get the yardage or the touchdowns or the wide open looks that he normally gets. So I'll give you an NBA example. So I'm hanging, this is last year, I'm in Atlanta, and Charles Barkley's a buddy of mine. So anytime I'm in Atlanta, I holler at Charles. And so we hook up and we're, just kind of hanging out, reminiscing and talking and just shooting the crap. And I don't know why the conversation came up, but it just came up about matchups and, the two different sports. I said, was there any guy that just gave you fits? And he didn't even think. He goes, oh, yeah, one guy that drove me crazy and always had my number. 100% of the time had my number. And I'm thinking Hall of Fame guy, right. Was it Bird? Was it, who was it? I'll give you a hint. I won't even give you. Well, I'll give you a hint. He used to play in Denver.
Oh, geez, back then I don't know. Bill Hanslick,
Popeye Jones.
Popeye Jones.
Popeye.
Okay.
He said Popeye Jones just shut him down and always had like 25 on him. He's like the most innocuous. Like nobody, like most people don't even listen to this podcast. Have never heard of Popeye Jones. Right. But he said he just for whatever he never could figure it out. But every time he played against Popeye Jones got the best of it. So like
I'm sure with your matchups over the years, like you went up against some great offensive players and more than held your own against a lot of these guys.
I dominated the good players.
Yet there's probably some guy that most people out there watching never heard of. Or are going to be like, oh, yeah, I'd forgot about that guy who you probably struggled mightily against.
There's two guys that I really struggled with over the course of my career. I probably could come up with another one. But innocuous guys that most NFL, most stringent NFL fans have never heard of. Phil Hansen. Do you remember Phil Hansen?
Buffalo? Played on a lot of Buffalo
teams? He was
teams?
A defensive end for Buffalo, but he played inside in nickel situations. So he's an inside rusher as a three technique defensive tackle. Hated playing against Phil. Hated it. And he was little. He was skinny. He was little, but he was just gelatinous. He was hard to get my hands on. Like if you ran into me or let me get my hands on you, you're done. I don't care who you were. Ain't nobody stronger in the history of the National Football League than me. Like you run into me, I'm like, yeah, and you're done. But the gelatinous guys. So he drove me crazy. The other guy was Pierce Holt.
San
Francisco. Pierce Holt, man, ate my lunch several times. And it's funny, when I was a young player, I went to London and we scrimmaged against the 49ers. And so I'm a young player. I'm a Pro Bowl, young player, won a Super Bowl. It's 1992. We're over in London. And we're playing the 49ers. So we practice against them every day and stuff. And then we play a game at Wembley. And I am freaking kicking his ass in practice, just kicking his ass. And because he played up close to me, right? And he let me get my hands on him. And as soon as I get my hands on you, you're done. It's just nothing you're going to do. And I swear to you, man, I played him in a game It was a playoff game in San Francisco, and that dude lined up 3 yards off the ball. Like I could barely see him. And he was like the Tasmanian freaking devil. He's like, yeah, from 3 yards, hitting spins. And like, I was like, I think I gave up two or three sacks. I mean, I got my ass kicked at this game. I couldn't get my hands on the guy. He was just like a spastic, greased up, whatever. And, oh, dude, it was just like, it was one of those just hang your head, because I just like totally got destroyed in that game. Pierce Holt got me. Hey, Pierce, if you're listening, you got me.
But that just goes to show, I guess, so whether it's individuals or then it becomes teams, you have these hard to understand, hard to fathom matchup, and definitely Pittsburgh and Baltimore seem to be one of them. We'll see what Baltimore does about it this time. I want to ask you this question, because we tend to focus on the teams that are looking right now to be the real heavyweights, the real contenders. I'm curious, when you look at the NFC and the AFC playoff picture, who's out there that you would say are the proverbial, hey, nobody's going to want to play this team? I bring this up only because here in Denver, the Broncos are one win away from going to the playoffs. And Bo Nix was asked this week about his mindset for the next 3 weeks of the season. And he's like, hey, I'm just concentrating on getting wins these next 3 weeks and going into the playoffs and winning a Super Bowl. And we're all like, whoa, you were supposed to win 5 games this year, guys. Right. Now you're talking about the Super Bowl. But then you start thinking, all right, a team like that, if they get in, could they be dangerous? Who would you put in that category?
All right. Well, in the AFC, I think there's only one team. Like, Buffalo is a favorite. Kansas City is a multiple-time winner. Baltimore scares you because of Lamar, but I don't think they're one of those teams that, like, I think everybody, just because of Lamar and that running game with Derrick Henry, I think they're on everybody's radar. Yeah. Like, how difficult, if you can't defend their run game, which is really hard to defend, you're getting beat. That's just the way it is with Baltimore. So those are the teams, but I don't know that there's any surprises there, so to speak. Right. I guess there's only one team that I caution people on, because they've pretty much flown under the radar the whole season, and that's the Houston Texans. Because C.J. Stroud hasn't had the same season he had as a rookie, but they had some injuries along their receiving core, right? They've just kind of muddled through, and because that division, the AFC South is so weak, right, that nobody really pays attention to them. But defensively, man, they can rush the passer. They've got Stingley's one of the best cover corners in football. Like, they can play on the defensive side of the ball. And listen, if Nico Collins gets like rolling like he was at the beginning of the season, I don't know where they are health-wise, but Joe Mixon can really play. Yep. Like, they're a team to me that nobody talks about, that hasn't really looked right all season long. They've got a game against Kansas City. Is that on Saturday, I believe? Yep. So, like, if they can beat Kansas City, all of a sudden I think they're on everybody's radar, because they're physical. They play really hard. They just haven't looked right all season long.
All right. They'll play Kansas City, and I'm sure Mark will have some thoughts on that game that will appear in Tiger Beat magazine next week.
Yes,
so
exactly. Yeah. All right, and then in the NFC, there are 2 teams that come to the forefront of my mind right off the bat. One, it's the LA Rams. You've got Hall of Famer Matthew Stafford. You've got 2 of the best blocking and just football playing wide receivers in football, in Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. I think the thing that has really changed for them, we talk about the matchups. We talk about Pittsburgh versus Baltimore. A matchup they couldn't get by was the San Francisco matchup. They used to get throttled by the 49ers, physically just get punched in the chest. I mean, it was a physical mismatch. So one of the things that Sean McVay did over the last couple of years, last 2 years, and it started last year, was readdress their offensive line, readdress their line of scrimmage, readdress what they were doing and the way they were calling the game. And they have become a much more physical football team. And they've matched the 49ers. They beat them twice, albeit a down year for the 49ers, but physically they've matched up to the 49ers. They haven't gotten sand kicked in their faces anymore. So I think that's been a big difference for the LA Rams. They can run the ball. They're a physical group on both lines of scrimmage. And of course, with that receiving core, man, good things happen for them because of that. And so that would be a team that I would look at and say, man, I don't know that anybody truly wants to play them. And then the other team that I was thinking about, Mike, is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Baker's got that ability to play a quarter or two or three where he's just like off and then just catch fire. But the thing that intrigued me more about the Tampa Bay Bucs than anything else is when I talked to them 2 weeks ago. And I sit down and Mike Evans is coming back to play after a 3-game hiatus with a hamstring. And, he's got that record, 10,000 yards,
yep.
or excuse me, 1,000 yards in 10 straight seasons, right? And so I mentioned to Baker, I said, Mike, this is all I said. I was like, hey, man, now you're aware of Mike Evans. And he goes, yeah, 99.5 yards per game for the rest of the year. It's more important to me. It's more important to my teammates. It's more important to all of us than it is to Mike Evans. He's a professional. He's never mentioned it. He doesn't care, but we care. And I'm like, shit, I didn't even ask the question, right? But it reminded me of Terrell Davis needing 2,000 yards.
Yeah, it's a good story.
And going into the last game of the season, he was 177 yards away. 177 he needed in the last game of the season, Mike. And damn it was more important to me and to the rest of our offensive staff than it was to Terrell. And I'm telling you, Mike, we had Bill Harple was our operations manager, and he stood on the sideline with a grease board like the one behind me. And after every carry, he had the subtraction board, what TD needed. And we're all looking like every time TD to break 22 yards, we'd look over and like, how many does he need? How many does like we were? I mean, it was unbelievable. And just the community like that was brought together, like the power of playing for something bigger than yourself is huge. And that's the feeling I got when I talked about Mike Evans to Baker Mayfield. And then Liam Cohen, their offense coordinator, came in. And so I said, hey, man, I was just talking to Baker about Mike Evans. And he goes, needs 99.5 yards per game. Like, we're getting him this record. I think he had 157 last week. Now he needs 88 yards per game, 88.3 yards per game or whatever. But they're playing not only for themselves, but they're playing for Mike Evans in this record of 11 straight seasons to tie Jerry Rice. But he'll be the first guy ever to do it from his rookie year on. So really cool stuff going on in Tampa, and I'm not sure that anybody really wants to play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
All right, interesting. Tampa, Rams, Houston. Okay, file those names and those teams away as real potential dark horses come playoff time. Time for our picks, and I don't know what to say.
Yeah, you're getting your ass kicked, and you talked a good game last week. You thought after I had a little bit of a down week, you were going to make this dramatic comeback. Last week, you went 1-2. Your record right now is 24-21. Where I went 3-0 with a record of 29-15-1, just shy of 65% or so, which is the kind of stuff that legends are made of. So,
well, I'm going to have to just press for the playoffs.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to have to go double or nothing.
Down.
Yeah, double down, baby.
But you get to pick first this week, which is great for you.
Yeah, it is. And actually, I've been encouraged by my picks with what you've just been talking about with these dark horses, because I'm going with the Rams on the road at the Jets. -3. Jets just want to finish the season. 1-2-3 Cancun. So I'm going to take the Rams -3 against the Jets. I'm going to take Minnesota -3 on the road at
It's actually gone up to 3.5. So you're getting 3.5 with the Rams.
All right, -3.5 with the Rams. I'm giving 3.5.
Yeah, you're giving 3.5.
I'll give the 3 with Minnesota at Seattle. Geno Smith, full participant in practice this week, so he'll probably play, but maybe still a little banged up. Plus, Minnesota's got some serious mojo going. And I'm going to take Baker and the Bucks -4 at Dallas.
I like that. They were on my list of picks, but you get to pick first. And so I can't pick the same team as you. That's part of the rule, which makes this even more amazing that I'm 29-15-1.
I have a feeling I see a little gleam in your eye. I think you got something planned here.
Well, not really, Mike, but I am going to go against your Rams pick.
Ooh.
The Jets have been playing very close to the vest. Aaron Rodgers is feeling ripe and feeling fresh. Told me threw one in practice last week when I sat down with him on Saturday. Last Saturday, I sat down with Aaron Rodgers. So I'm the only analyst in the nation to sit down with Aaron Rodgers face-to-face over the last week and have a conversation about how he's feeling. And he's feeling fresh. He's moving around really well. He said he uncorked one easy 65 yards in practice the other day. Dude, and I watched him warm up, and I gotta be honest. I got a little excited. It was a cure for ED. Let me just say that. So his arm talent is ridiculous. So I'm going to take the Jets. I don't know that they'll win, but getting 3.5, I'll take the Jets and I'll take the 3.5. Then I believe the Eagles going to Washington to play the Commanders. I think the Eagles right now are the best team in football. They've heard the noise that they created themselves. Okay, they created the noise themselves, and they responded to the noise. I think noise in Philly is like chicken soup for the soul. Mm-hmm. I'm going the Eagles -3.5. I think they win in Washington. And then lastly, the Lions are playing their JV squad on defense. It is not good. Luckily, they have the Bears. Their whole offense and defense is a JV squad. Caleb Williams has been playing awful football. Lions giving up 6.5. I think they're a touchdown better, even with the injuries to the Chicago Bears. So I'm taking the Lions, giving the 6.5. So I've got the Jets +3, the Eagles -3.5, the Lions -6.5. You're the Rams -3.5. You are the Minnesota -3 and Tampa Bay -4.
Okay. Fair enough. Very good. We'll see what happens. But I'm getting ready for the playoffs. I'm just going to start getting ready for the playoffs. Start prepping for the playoffs.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of conceding. I'm giving you the regular season, but I'm coming after you in the playoffs. By the way, what's all that stuff doodling behind you there? That looks like some impressive stuff there.
Yeah, I want you to memorize that play. Fly to I write book, 18 handoff F sift. So if you can memorize that, I'm going to quiz you next week on that particular play and see if you can come up with it. All right.
I'll be just like Bo Nix. I'll be so good. You'll be checking my backpack to see what's in it.
All right. Hey, for everybody involved in the Stinkin Truth podcast, we appreciate you guys watching us. For Mike, I am Mark. Thank you so much. Subscribe and do all those things. Share it with all your friends. We appreciate you guys, and we will back with you. Hey, you're going to go early next week, Monday, because of the holiday. So we're going to come Monday. We'll be here after all the games, breaking it all down. For Mike, I am Mark. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you later.